but to go deep within inside into the place that was there before we were formed in the womb. Tap into that place and see what is being pulled out of you. What have you been keeping dormant that has not been able to come out? What power, what gift, what passion do you need to release?
Everybody put 3 fingers in the air. The sky's falling, the wind is calling, stand for something or die in the morning. Section 80, high power.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Vianney. I wanted to do this video. This might be a little bit longer because it's not only touching on something personal, but something I believe is at its core, one of the fundamental reasons why we struggle, straight up, and I think a lot of our lives are dependent upon whether we ever get this insight or not, what I'm going to share with, which many of you already know. Some people already know, but yet there's so much programming done, it's hard to really live by it. We are separated. We have separated ourselves from source. In general, as a collective, human beings have separated themselves from source. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into what source is. I'm not going to say God. I can't put a name on the origin of all these things. I can't do it. Nobody can. Nobody can. It sounds crazy to even do it. We have to remember how much of our human self we project into other lives, into other books, into other people. We project a lot of our personal beliefs. That did not just happen a few hundred years ago. That shit's been going on since the beginning of human consciousness. We've projected what we believe, what we experienced into the text, and inspired and influenced a bunch of people to believe that, and so on and so forth. Keeping that in mind, I'm not going to try to put a name on anything. I don't even want to use the word source. I could just say the origin where everything created. You want to find God, you want to know what God is, go find the origin, and good luck on that, because you really won't find that. You'll find things that kind of point to that, of where that will be, but to pinpoint exactly the origin and have evidence of it and receipts of it, you'll never get it, right? And wherever that is, the eternal, what we can't even fathom, that's source. So that's what I'm talking about, all right, when I talk about source. And we've separated ourselves from that. Not disconnected, because we're never going to be disconnected. We're always going to be connected, but we separated ourselves. So much so that we make other people, our source. We make other things. I grew up Jehovah Witness. And Jehovah Witnesses, man, you gotta know that Bible. You gotta know that word, straight up. So I grew up Jehovah Witness. And then I had a time where I was just studying all types of things. Islam, 5%er, Buddhism, even Catholicism, being agnostic, studying other spiritual modalities, some of the basics of Kemetic sciences, just other schools of thought. I've always been that individual, but I did, in a very heavy way, follow Christianity. Through the relationships that I built and started to feel like that might have been something I really needed. I didn't grow up Christian, but I really followed it heavy. I was in the church heavy. I got kicked out the church, actually. That's a whole other conversation. But I always, even before that, always looked at the Bible as something that was talking more about us. Nothing that was talking about, I never looked at it as face value. I never thought there was an actual snake talking. I never thought that. And eventually I evolved to a point where I understood the Bible as being a representation of our consciousness, a representation of our bodies, a representation of our higher self. I believe that's all what Jesus stood for. Someone who tapped into Christ consciousness and understood what it's like to show up as your higher self every single day and wanted everybody else to do it. And pissed off the Pharisees because they were like, hold up, you fucking up our money. We supposed to get that. They're supposed to come give sacrifices to us. That's the way. You're supposed to be the person to make us bigger and powerful. And now here you are bringing everybody outside the church and pointing to themselves. And somewhere we lost that shit. We lost that understanding. When you talk about what separates us from God, can we be separated from God, from source. What separates us is the belief that what we see determines what we think or how we feel or how we think. If what we see with our eyes determines how we think, what we feel, and how we feel, then yes, we can absolutely be separated. We make everything that we see bigger than us. So if I don't see the money in its fullness in my hand, then that means I should think like this, I should feel like this, I should worry, I should concern, I should be depressed. If I don't see the love or the relationship like right in front of me, comforting me being able to exchange with them, then yes, I should feel pain, I should feel despair, I should feel heartbroken, and that's just how I should feel. Everything that we see determines how we think and how we feel. You know what I'm saying? And again, this isn't every single person, but in general, as a collective, that's what's happened. That means that we've separated ourselves. We've put these things as something higher than us, and we're supposed to be gods. Jesus said, ye are gods, children of the Most High. We're supposed to be gods. But what's really going to help us come up from situations like that is when we not change those situations, but when we look more inside of ourselves to realize who we truly are. What power do we really have? Before the substance of money, just like in the scripture, it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. So that means there was a time where some powerful information was given, some powerful working, some powerful activity was happening before the form of substance, before we came about in the womb, before we became our bodies, before we became anything. There was a time, there was a period where there was nothing. The unmanifest, the place where there was nothing, but there was everything in this place, wherever or whenever that was. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. In that place is where that's where thought is originated. And this is where everything came from. So before the money, before the relationship, there was something happening. Before a thought forms, it originates in us. Think about that power. Really, really just for a moment, think about that power of everything we see coming from thought, which means it came from someone else's consciousness. It came from other areas of consciousness. And you have that same power. We have that same power. In all situations, we really do have the power to completely shift the whole room, change the whole energy just from our thoughts. That's not pseudoscience. That's not just fluff. That's real shit. But it's considered almost. Some people would almost like remove it. They don't even want to look at that understanding. Some people look at that as new age teaching. Like, that shit is not new age. None of that is new age. Maybe some people now just got onto it. But this shit has always been around. As above, so below. Jesus said, store your treasures in heaven, your riches in heaven. Where's heaven? He said, kingdom of heaven is inside of you. So store it here. Store what your abundance here, in your consciousness, in your imagination, in your vision. That's power. And I think it's important for us to know that we have that power, so we don't allow these spiritual gurus and other people to become higher than us. They might have something to teach you, and they might have something to offer you. Somebody might have money to offer you. Somebody might have things to teach you, but they are still in their process of becoming God in fullness. They still have the same power you have, and you have the same power they have, the same essence, your chain. In Taoist, they call it the chain, which is your essence. It's what you're born with, right? But you could deplete it. And you deplete it by separating yourself and being in that, breaking that law of harmony, where it's not harmonious anymore. You're not flowing with the soul. You're not allowing the soul to emerge through you so you can live this life as your higher self. We start to now look at the situations, look at the conditions, look at the things, and everything becomes bigger than that. So we want that. We want to feel what we feel from those things. That's what's gonna make us feel better. If you're God, why you don't have $1 million? If you're a God, not the God, but if you're a God, why you don't do this? Why you don't do that? And it's really funny when I hear people say that, because that's literally what was happening with Jesus on the hill when he was fasting. Everybody talk about the devil came. No outside, and this is my opinion, no outside entity came through and started saying something to Jesus. That was Jesus talking to his lower, or the lower self Jesus talking to the higher self Christ. Well, if you do this, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You know what I'm saying? And so that was like a moment Jesus had of self-sabotage. Jesus had a imposter syndrome moment, and we witnessed it. It wasn't just about the devil coming to tempt him. It was about his lower self saying, if you're this, then go do that. Go do this. But he knew that's not how he was being led. That's not how it. If my purpose was to go and just like, boom, make $5 million fall out the sky, I would walk in that purpose. I would listen to that. That might be somebody's purpose, but they might not be listening to it. That might be what somebody has to do. Go make $5 million fall out the sky. You know what I'm saying? But they're not listening to it because it sounds crazy, right? But Noah followed his purpose. You know, all of these spiritual leaders from ancient to modern day, they all had a moment, a time where they had something bubbling inside. They had to follow their purpose, and when they did amazing shit. Even if we didn't hear about it, you know, we might not know about it though, but it was what they had to do for their book in the Bible. So I just think it's important, you know what I'm saying, for us to understand, you know what I mean, especially those who are Christian, those who are very religious and look out at source only and not understanding their role as a co-creator. You know, and not just for abundance, not just for things, but just even for relationships, even to be able to be in a place of higher thought where you know, okay, I have the power of thought. How do I now choose higher thought? That's Christ consciousness. And when we step into that Christ consciousness, we're able to now see things from the inside out, which means our relationships are more about the soul, not about our ego wanting to be obsessive, wanting to be possessing or anything like that. Like, that's about the soul now. So that now you're working with that person. You're loving that person in a different way because you're not now in love with that person. You are loved. So you're attracting it and you're bringing it out regardless. And that person's going to feel that security. And even if it's uncomfortable for them, they'll always remember how you made them feel, which was love. Because that's what you are. Because that's where you're coming from. Higher thought, Christ consciousness. When we somehow relinquish that power solely to something outside of us, solely to something that's going to go from the outside in, we're now separating ourselves. In the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh. The Word, which in Logos means thought, or utterance, expression of that thought, that means in the beginning was the thought, and the thought became flesh. The thought was God, and the thought became flesh. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's already showing you how much power we have. Our thought alone. But now we got to sit on the right hand of the Father. So we talk about right hand of the brain, right hand of the whole total consciousness, or the brain that embodies the whole consciousness of the source. And if we sit on the right hand, if we go to the right hand of the brain, what is that? Creativity, conceptualizing, right? Imagination, all comes from the right hand, which are all attributes of what God pretty much performed in the beginning of the whole Bible. That's not coincidence. That's not just me finding some things and connecting dots. That's all designed. Because even the person who created the whole diagram of the brain, all the scientists that got together for that, they too were following their soul's intention. And they too created things that were connected directly to what it was saying in the Bible. Right hand of the Father, right hand of the brain. Creation, imagination, conceptualizing, empathy. These are all associated to the right hand of the brain. Left hand is everything on the outside, logical, all that other stuff. And that's cool. That has its place. But we have to understand, before what we see, what we think and what we feel is the true reality. And this is the hard part when it comes to manifesting. Because by thought, it is given. By action, it is received. So you can think it, yes. God said it be done. I'm claiming it. Cool. Action just isn't about you praying for it. You should actually not even pray for it no more. It's there. It's coming. Now you got to position yourself to receive it. So that comes down to, everything, whatever it is that you're looking for. You know what I'm saying? If it's a relationship that you claim and you somehow have this great marriage, okay, cool. So now the action is, let me make sure I'm loving myself. Let me make sure I'm giving myself compassion. Let me make sure I'm being patient and grace and giving myself grace and understanding and all that other stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's all what you have to do to receive this relationship that's coming. If it's money, okay, let me make sure my debt is in check. Let me make sure I'm handling my finances right. Let me make sure I'm looking at money the right way and I'm seeing money the right way. You know what I'm saying? And my relationship with money is healthy. Those are the things you have to make sure are straight before, or not even before, but as this manifestation is coming, you want to be receiving it. You want to be in position to receive it. And that's what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? You got, so we can easily have our thoughts get us what we want, but we have to receive those. But even before that, we have to know our power for real. Because not everything that we want is going to just happen in its fullness right away. It's manifesting. So it's a process. But in the midst of that process is where we have to maintain our gratitude, even when the chaos is going around. But you got to know the power of your thought to do that. You got to know the power you have overall to do that. But what greater sacrifice than to sacrifice the innate reaction to believe in what our eyes see for the vision of what God knows, to relinquish the power of our intuition to the power of the soul's intention. Because now we're going to that place before we were formed in the womb. We're going into that unknown place. That's the unknown place we're separated from way too much. We have to go back there more. The pandemic wasn't just for us to go inside, but for us to go inside of ourselves. And the time was there for us to do that in a very deep way, not to become people that chase the bag, because now money is fucked up. Now we want to go chase the bag. We want to become traders and all this other shit. You know what I'm saying? But to go deep within inside into the place that was there before we were formed in the womb. Tap into that place and see what is being pulled out of you. What have you been keeping dormant that has not been able to come out? What power, what gift, what passion do you need to release? Right? And we need to take the time to do that. And we need to stay in that place. Because if we don't stay in that place, we become more and more disconnected. And what we see determines how we think and feel. So we don't know how to rebuild ourselves. We're waiting for the source, which is the conditions, to do that for us. But source is within us. We are tied to source. We are connected to source. We can tap in anytime we want. Anytime we want. You start with some gratitude. You start with some love. You start with that, and everything starts to come. All the vibration starts to build, and it's a snowball effect. It's a snowball effect, but we have to first understand that power we have within us to do exactly that. This isn't just about abundance or law of attraction and just, put this out there again. I'm not even talking about that. Not even talking about that. Those are all results of what's going on within us. But we have to understand our power in that and not rely on, follow your religion. I'm not bashing religion. I'm not bashing believing in, whatever scripture or whatever text you want to believe in, but just understand that where it all comes from, source, is in you. And you have absolutely every ability and power that all other teachers, scribes, and everybody else had. They just chose to tap into it and allow it to lead them. What's leading you? What's leading us? Is it our ego or is it our soul? See, it takes someone who understands their own divinity to boldly walk in uncertainty. Boldly walk into uncertainty, because we know, those who understand our thoughts, those who have tapped into that place before we were formed in the womb, we know that uncertainty is where God works. That's where magic happens, in the uncertainty. We know that pain is fuel. We know that darkness is light. This is the difference of what we tap into when we understand that. Know your power. You don't have to put conditions, people, things above you. You are the validation. All right? I love you. I love your journey. Peace.
Just call it shit high power. Nigga, nothing less than high power.